Hey everyone, Sammy here. Just wanted to show you guys a quick little tidbit about Raw Max that my friend and I discovered not too long ago. So if you don't know, Raw Max increases your damage for all non-metered moves by 25%. And for a character like Luong, like her Geki does 60 damage. In Raw Max, it'll do 75. However, the damage for this is not actually scaled based off of total damage, it's actually scaled off of just damage per hit. And what I mean by that is that there's a lot of moves in this game that actually scale on total damage. For example, a lot of 2-hitting close normals don't activate scaling until afterwards. But when you're in Raw Max mode, it actually takes the damage into consideration over total damage, and therefore scales every hit appropriately by 25%. And this can be easily shown by doing something like Throw, which normally does 100 damage for every character. And in Max should do 125 for every character, but not the case for any character that does multiple hitting moves in their throw. Hydrant Throw does 250 damage hits, and in Raw Max does 2 hits of 62. And the reason why that is because the way that it's scaling up is by per hit damage. So it is increasing the 50 damage by 25% rather than the total damage by 25%. So 50 increased by 25% is actually 62.5, but the game is actually dropping the decimal every single time. So instead of equaling 125, it's just getting the 62 times 2. You might be thinking that 1 damage is not a big deal, and you're probably right, but the problem actually lies in other moves. For example, Hydrant Stormbringer does 100 damage, but does a bunch of little hits to give you the effect of draining life. Which is pretty cool aesthetically, but terrible functionally. As you can see, when you go into Raw Max, the move actually does a measly 116 instead of the 125 it's promised. I'm not going to show every implication of when this is faulty, but there are some characters that kind of actually just get away with it because their numbers are slightly nicer than other characters. Angel just gets lucky. Some characters get horribly unlucky. I'm not sure about Stormbringer because the whole point of it is to show that the move is draining life slowly out of your opponent, but for all normal throws that don't have any combo implications, the solution's quite simple. Take Vanessa for example, her first 3 hits do 10 damage and the last hit does 70 because they want to show that the last hit, the launching one, is doing the most damage. You can solve this by changing the numbers just a little bit. Taking Vanessa for example, instead of having the first hits do 10 damage, you can have all of them do 20 damage and the last hit do 40. And all of those numbers multiply evenly by 25%, and therefore the machine's actually not dropping any decimals while it's doing the scaling. Therefore you'll get 125. To be quite honest, this will affect probably 0.0001% of games, since the meta right now in 15 doesn't really have you going into Raw Max, but it's fun to just talk about the numbers and how the game treats them, and maybe it's something to keep in mind when you're trying to make optimal damage combos. So, go do your own testing and see which moves actually get screwed by the scaling and which moves don't. You might be surprised.